Hey folks, this is BestInSlot. Welcome back to our Mods of the Week Spotlight series for Jurassic World Evolution 2. Only 5 species to take a look at today, but one of them is very exciting, even outside of the context of Evolution 2. This is exciting in that it's a very recent discovery. That's the first one we're going to see. We'll check it out in just a moment. And it's a pretty special discovery at that. So before that though, very quick disclaimer, as per usual, mods can cause problems with your game, with your save files, yada yada yada. Just make sure that when the game updates, it's always a little safer to sort of wipe everything, and you know, make sure you finish your save files before you mess around with new mods. I think is generally speaking the safest way to do things. But hey, it's up to you. If something does go wrong though, it's not my fault, it's not the mod maker's fault, and it isn't Frontier's fault. Okay, now Asmodeus isn't here today because he can't swim, and we're underwater for our first creature, a brand new aquatic reptile. A very special brand new aquatic reptile. Here we go. So this is Icthyotitan by Gushy Guar. I should have mentioned, of course, all these mods will be linked down below in the mod document in the description as per usual. And this is the exciting one. This is really exciting stuff. Icthyotitan has only been described publicly in the last couple of weeks. My Twitter timeline has been absolutely blowing up about it. And here we have it already in Evolution 2, which is very cool. Now there are a couple of exciting things about Icthyotitan. The first is that this gigantic Icthyosaur is from the Rhaetian Age, and that is the latest time period of the Triassic era, which makes Icthyotitan as a probable Shastosaurid the latest known of the Shastosaurids, that family of largely gigantic ichthyosaurs. Icthyotitan's discovery then has extended the age range on Shastosaurids by about 13 million years to the very end of the Triassic. So that alone is pretty cool. That's new exciting information. But more excitingly, as you can tell, this thing is pretty gigantic. And the current suggestion is, based on the current estimates, that Icthyotitan might be the biggest aquatic reptile to ever be discovered. It could even be the biggest animal, we'll get to that in a moment, but it's the biggest aquatic reptile to ever be discovered if size estimates are correct. Second only really to the blue whale in terms of sheer just measurable size, I suppose, at least in terms of length combined with bigness. I don't know how else you describe it. We'll get into that in a second. Current estimates put the Icthyotitan at 82 feet long. 82 feet is absolutely gigantic, this thing. In fact, there are more fossils discovered in the Orst Cliffs in Gloucestershire, which are now being tentatively linked with Icthyotitan as a result of its discovery. They were previously dedicated to an unnamed Archosaur, but now people are thinking it could be Icthyotitan, and if it is Icthyotitan fossil specimens, then it would actually put the estimates much higher, at up to 115 feet in length. So this thing could be even bigger. Now in biology, when we talk about size, what we actually mean is mass, because if you think about it, you can't really accurately measure the size of an animal. You can get a length, you can get a height, but then you've got your diagonal measurements, and what if something's longer but the other thing's taller, you know what I mean? You know, nobody really talks about siphonophores, which are terrifying by the way, as the largest organism. So typically when we say size in biology, we just mean mass, we mean the weight. But still, at the very least, the largest, you know, if the size estimates are correctly, the largest aquatic reptile to ever exist, which is pretty cool. Brought really well to life by Gushy Guar. It's, you know, it's not dissimilar to, say, the Saurus, etc., which is very much what you would expect. It's got a huge amount of colour variation. We just ended up on this one here, but this is actually really nice. These sort of almost kaleidoscopic colours across the body. We've got this varied orange striping and then that bright orange spark there by the eyes. It looks really cool, and it's a good companion piece for the likes of your Saurus or maybe your Ichthyosaurus. You know, this is Icthyotitan. You could have your little tiny Icthyosauruses, and then you could have your Icthyotitan swimming around. It's just very cool to have something that's only just been described, and that's such a monumental creature and so important potentially in history, and that we've got it in the game already. And this is something Evolution 2 can provide really well, and I'm really excited to see more of. in the future. So shout out to Gushy Guar for this beautiful Icthyosaur. We aren't quite finished with our aquatics though. This is Poseidonsaurus by Hassan Wakatri, commissioned by Trip. And if you don't recognize the name, it's because it's fictional, basically. It's a fictional made-up mosasaur with a couple of little differences, and we'll get to those in just a second. So really interesting design here. You know, I do random coloration and there are plenty of color options, so what we end up with is kind of luck of the draw, but very interesting patterning for something like a mosasaur. Definitely this sort of multitude of striping and little sort of scale shapes at the bottom is very unique for a mosasaur, to say the very least. So fictional mosasaurus, it's got longer flippers than a typical mosasaur. You can see especially that tail flipper is fairly huge, would make it a very dynamic swimmer. And as a bonus, and hopefully this is the right colour, but if not we'll bring some more in, it should. So it's not this one. So oh, that was good though. Some of the colour variations for this mosa have bioluminescence. There we go. Look at that. Oh, I mean, most of them are bioluminescent. It seems like I have to be the only one that isn't. Very cool. So we've got this little purple lighting only on the inside of the flippers, which I think is actually a really nice little detail. Isn't that beautiful? This thing really comes to life at night time. Actually looks really cool at night. We've got the striping there down the tail. Looks really, really good. And then, of course, a smattering over here. Well, quite a large smattering over there along the skull and then down the top of the spine and the dorsal fin there. It's kind of beautiful. I've got it. It looks really cool. Really, yeah, really. I like this one as well. Loads of different variants. You can see already we've got several different, like at least 4 or 5 different bioluminescent colors on the screen at once, which is quite rare for this game. I really like this sort of orangey golden color we've got going on here. Absolutely beautiful. Bioluminescent mosasaur. The idea they said was it could kind of resemble schools of fish to, you know, attract other predators, attract other fish, and then the mosasaurus could of course strike back, which is pretty cool as ideas. Look at that, what a beaut. Right, let's move on to the land. So, stepping right out of the annals of Primeval is Rubida. Rubida. R-U-B-I-D. I'm okay with Rubid. Gaia, G-E-A, or it could be Haya, but that's because I'm thinking of footballers. By Master Dude. This is a Gorgonopsid from Permian, Africa. Very cool. And the largest of the African Gorgonopsids at that. This would have been an apex predator. Thickly built, and of course we've got these huge saber-like canines there at the front. Perfect for biting into a foe, not letting them escape, and then, you know, tearing them apart. All that lovely, jubbly kind of stuff. I learned a new word today as well. The skulls of Rubidgeia, I'm going to go Rubidgeia, were Pachyostoist, which of course makes sense given why Pachycephalosaurus, the thick-headed lizard, has that name, the thick-headed lizard. Of course we know Pachycephalosaurus had that very bony skull so it could, you know, compete. Ostosis, it's osto because it's bone. So it's Pachyostost. Pachyostosis simply means a bone thickening in a non-pathological manner. You can have your bones thicken as a human and it can be deadly, but this is a sort of a natural process that happens over time for these animals and is a boon to them. It's a positive. It's not, you know, something that's going to kill them, basically. Are we about to see a social animation? I think so. Yeah, so this thing had a very, very thick skull, and basically it had these layers of very thin bone on its skull that built up over time until it's got an incredibly thick skull. You can see looking at it here, this is basically pretty shrink-wrapped. It is just pure, pure skull. It may have had more muscle and fat on it in reality, but the shape here is really good. It's very, you know, I was taking a look at the skull before. This is very close to the actual skull that the animal had. And it's just really cool to see more Gorgonopsids. Really cool to see Master Duke tackling a Gorgonopsid. Looks, you know, of course, back in the Permian here, animals didn't get that large, but looks like an apex predator for the time. Looks strong and heavily built. Has that really menacing skull shape and those big canines. Just, you know, I love seeing Gorgonopsids in the game. It really makes me happy every time. So really cool to see this come to life. This terrifying apex foe. And shout out to Master Doom. So this very cool little dinosaur is Buriolos by Hocal1215. And actually, despite what it looks like, you gotta remember this is Hocal, it's a sauropodomorph actually, from the late Triassic of Brazil. Now interestingly enough, for a sauropodomorph, Buriolos is actually likely to be carnivorous based on its teeth. It would have fed on very small invertebrates and vertebrates. Did I say vertebrates twice? Invertebrates and vertebrates. This is further evidence that all dinosaurs were likely, initially at least, ancestrally carnivorous. And then herbivorous behavior was something evolved over time, independently in your sauropodomorphs and in some of your theropods, etc., etc. Now you can see here how Buriolos really does look more like a theropod than a typical sauropodomorph. We don't have a particularly long neck, we don't have those big nostrils. So there's little outward evidence of the sauropodomorph nature of this dinosaur. But if you peel back its skin like a weirdo, then you'd see a downturned jaw tip. You'd also see a long deltopectoral crest on its humerus, both typical of sauropodomorphs. So this is really a very, very basal stage of the sauropodomorph clade. So those unique features were kind of just beginning to develop. It's got some of the unique features that would come to define sauropodomorphs, but a lot of them aren't present. It's got enough that it is still a sauropodomorph and it is part of that lineage, but it's missing a lot of the key features because we're talking Triassic. Everything is still quite similar in how it looks. Things are just beginning to become derived from that point. It's a really cool mod. I've got to say, Hocal's texture work in particular, I saw this mentioned on Nexus, it's very true. The texture work in particular is really, really good. They've come a long way in a very short space of time, I'd say. This looks fantastic. I love this little smattering on the back, and then that very strong tail striping looks really cool. It's got a really unique little model. It's a really interesting little dinosaur individually as well. And hey, it's another sauropodomorph. It's something we, generally speaking, very much lack in the game. At least the basal sauropodomorphs. We've got plenty of sauropodomorphs, but we don't have these Triassic sauropodomorphs in the game. So really cool that Hocal continues to add these. Beautifully patterned on this one. I think it's my favourite. It looks really good. Shout out to Hocal1214 for bringing this huge collection of basal sauropodomorphs to life in a really cool way. That bounding out will always make me happy. Alright, sauropods as per usual will take too long. So, this is Rapetosaurus by Chocolate. Now, those of you with a memory, I'm not going to talk about this one too much because we covered Chocolate's Rapetosaurus just the other week. I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, we covered the Rapetosaurus, named after the god, and I told you all about the history of those gods in that case. I just wanted to show you this very quickly because they brought out a version 1.1, I think it is, on a new account, yada yada yada, on the correct account, and it's had a little bit of an upgrade. It looks, it was already a decent mod, but this looks a lot nicer. I really, really like this neck pattern. I think that's really interesting, unique. That's brand new to this version of the mod. Definitely makes it feel a little bit more special. These sort of spikes down there at the lower part of the vertebra look really cool as well. Really nice little detail on there. And overall, it's just really now interesting looking sauropod. You know, this kind of mid-sized. It's got like a big looking body on a mid-sized to small-sized sauropod. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense in my head. Either way, yeah, it looks really cool. Like I said, I'm not going to talk too much about this one, but you know, it's such an upgrade, it's such a glow up from the last version we looked at that I thought it deserved a little bit of a spotlight. Anyways, yeah, so that's Rapetosaurus come to life even more beautifully than it had last time. I highly recommend, if you, especially if you downloaded the last version, you should upgrade to this one because it is a substantial improvement. Love that little detail above the crest over the eyes as well. Really good stuff. Thank you very much for joining me. Come back tomorrow for a live restreaming. Frontier have their Frontier Unlocked happening tomorrow. I forgot to turn off feeding. Frontier have their Frontier Unlocked happening tomorrow, and they have said they're going to talk about Jurassic World Evolution 2. Now, I'm not necessarily expecting anything big, but we're definitely going to be checking it out to see if there's any news. So come back then, and 6 p.m. UK time tomorrow, so should be good. And if not, you'll be able to catch it on catch up, and of course we'll talk about if there's anything important that happens. Right, thank you so much for joining me. Throw me a like if you enjoyed the video, yada yada yada. Cheers much as always. Bye bye.